Hey, what's up, podcast? It's Jeff. Just want to jump in here. This is a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk. This is actually going to be the audio recorded from a Facebook Live that our team is doing every single day, Monday through Friday, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time in our Facebook private group. You can get in that group at teachbettergroup.com or go on to Facebook and just search Teach Better Team. You'll see our page and then you'll see the group. Get in there. So here we go, a special bonus episode of Teach Better Talk pulled from one of our Facebook Live videos in our private group at teachbettergroup.com. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome to our daily drop-in this morning, where we get to go live every single morning, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern. And we just get to talk shop and answer your questions and just be available as brainstorming partners. I have a really fun guest with me, and I don't know how I convinced him to join me, but I love kicking off my morning talking to you, Brad. It was a great experience a few weeks ago, and now that we get to do it again, I'm already thrilled that this is the part of my morning I get to kick off with.
No, I'm right there with you. When you were on the show, it was only a few weeks ago, but I told you it was like the best day because I felt so pumped and excited by the end of our conversation. It was just, it was awesome.
I do have to say there is a concern, and we're going to have you introduce yourself and all that good stuff too. But as people are slowly coming in, they're going to start commenting, saying good morning. This is kind of how our daily drop-ins work pretty frequently. But I do have to tell you, when I was on your podcast, we recorded at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., which is not early. I'm usually up and going by then, but I don't usually record podcasts in the morning. So I was a little anxious. I'm like, who is this guy? He's recording podcasts in the morning. Like what? He doesn't appreciate a good cup of coffee? And we had a ball getting to talk shop that day. It was so fun. It was a great experience.
It was. It was, and I don't even know, at this point, I don't remember everything you said because there were so many moments where you just said something and I was just, okay, yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And we're going to stick with it.
Well, I'm a fan. I really enjoy your podcast. I won't lie to you. I had listened to a few episodes, but not really. And then since I've been on, I have subscribed. I listened to all the episodes. I love staying caught up. And there's definitely some amazing people that you've gotten to highlight, and the work you're doing, I just think is really conducive to our network. So as people are popping in this morning, I'm going to give you a homework assignment 2 minutes in that they're going to have to go check out to your podcast. Before we get into all those details though, would you just tell us, who are you? What do you do in education? How do we trick you into joining our daily drop-in?
So my name's Brad Streffler. I am a instructional technology coach, digital instruction coach, whatever title you want to throw at me. By day, of course, days and nights are all the same at this point. So I'm just always all the things. But so I'm a digital instructional coach, and let's see, what else? I run the Planning Period podcast. I guess that's kind of a thing. I have a problem with swag. It's a serious addiction I need to address. I'm also starting, I just do lots of things. I talk to people. That's really what it is. I just love talking to people, especially about education and about other stuff. And so that's who I am.
Well, I am a fan of how you talk to people because your podcast it's very low key. It feels like you're getting to listen in on a conversation. And truly, I know you have some scripted questions, but really it's just so much more of a conversation, which is my style of podcast. I like to feel like it's just two wonderful people talking shop. And so I think it's awesome. We do have Dr. Dan Kreiness.
Dr. Kreiness is here. I love Dan. Dan's a great guy.
He's giving you a shout out right now. And I do want to congratulate him. He just became a doctor. And so that was a big deal for him. What was it, a few weeks ago that was a big celebration?
I think it was last week, but I'm not positive. But
time is relative now. It seems like everything is all messed up, but still very exciting for him. I do want to go back. I know you have a lot of different roles, but the podcast is really something that you have focused on. And you did say that you had a problem with swag. I won't lie to you. I just received my first Teach Better Team sweatshirt. And I have had other Teach Better Team swag that's been gifted to me. It's been so sweet. But I bought this sweatshirt. I was so excited. It came in the mail yesterday. Better today, better tomorrow. I'm in love. I don't know how you can be in love with a black sweatshirt, but especially as somebody who has an addiction to swag, I feel like you must understand when you get something cool in the mail, it's like I put it on right away, and I'm going to wear it for the next 12 days and see if anybody notices.
Yeah, mine is a problem. So I had for a while, for the first, like, not for the first year, but when I got I had a friend of mine design my logo for my show. I had mocked up a really terrible version of it on like I probably did it in Paint, MS Paint, because that's what I do most of my design in is Paint, because it's a simple program and it's easy. But I mocked up this really simple version of this idea of like sort of the schoolhouse with the two people talking is just kind of what I was going for. And then I have a highly talented artist friend that did some work for me. And so she made it look actually good. And then after that, I found that, like the subscription boxes that are out there, like you get all these subscription boxes. Well, Vistaprint does a swag subscription box. So for $25 a month, they just send you a box every month with your logo on it. And I'm like, and they design all the stuff. Like they give you hats, that's where this mug came from. Like I didn't buy this mug in particular, just they sent me a mug, and like, not the shirts, I bought the shirts, but the banner came from there, like a lot of stuff. If I look around my office space here, my desk space is just a shrine to my podcast logo, which by the way is also my guest room. So I'm sure my guests love coming in here and just seeing the same blue and red logo all over.
Well, the worst part of that is that I bet your guests come, and when they leave, you have to look around and be like, they took like my swag, my poster's gone, my t-shirt's gone.
Yeah, it is. Oh, I have a mouse pad over here. Like it's everywhere. It's a serious problem. Actually, that year when I did the taxes for the business, I was like, oh yeah, I got to cancel this. This is getting out of control.
I think that you need to do it. And I think all of us listening right now, I mean, you have a bunch of people live with us. I think we should all get a subscription box for the podcast, and we can all come live together and have matching t-shirts and drinking mugs. It'd be perfect.
Yeah. I mean, it's, for $25 a month, it wasn't terrible at first. And then but then the other problem was, they always get you, right? So it's like $25 a month. And then it came with a like $10 or $20 gift certificate to Vistaprint. So you could turn around and buy the stuff that was in there. But of course, none of the stuff in there was the price of the gift certificate. So you like spend like an extra 10 or 15 bucks on top of that. So
yep. Okay. Well, I will say I am swag obsessed, and this is a foolish shutout, but for Teach Appreciation Week, our Teach Better swag is actually 25% off your whole order. And so that's a little like nudge, nudge. If you are swag addicted, we should not only get for the podcast, but also go over to teachbetter.com and click that swag button. You can get 25% off using the code BETTER SWAG. And that's only through the rest of the week. So I guess it's Thursday. You got to go do it like super soon. But definitely, I love a good deal. I love, that. I think that's great. So I'm all about it. We do have a bunch of people in the comments that are already saying good morning. They're grabbing their coffee, which I definitely support. I know that you said you were already on your third cup, which I think is very impressive at 7 a.m. Central in the morning. I do want to give a very special shout out. We have Bree in here, Alex. I saw Lindsay, Tammy, Andrea. I do want to give a shout out to Joe and Adam and Baby Luke, who I don't know how to go live if Baby Luke is not a part of it. So I'm always excited to see that he's there bright and early in the morning, kicking off the day. I do think this daily drop-in is a really positive way to kick off a day. I think it kind of sets a routine for people. I do like, though, I listen to your podcast in the morning. So I think like that's kind of a part of my system too throughout the week is getting to tune into your episodes. Will you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with the podcast? And obviously, as you're kind of giving us that information, we already talked about the awesome logo, and hopefully people can kind of share their questions for this morning if they want to dive into any ideas dealing with remote learning or anything else going on with the team.
Yeah. So the podcast really, it came about as an idea in my head when I first became a coach, an instructional coach. And it was, it was funny because I became an instructional coach at the school I had been teaching at the year prior. So I was a 9th grade English teacher. And then as the school was going 1-to-1, they needed a digital, I convinced my principal that we needed a digital coach. And then I said, and also, by the way, it's going to be me. And so he was like, okay, yeah, fine. And so it was really great and I loved it. And then I kept having these conversations with people, and it was it was these moments in my day, in my week, really. Like it would be maybe once, twice a week. And I'd find myself in the break room or in the copy room, or, maybe join a teacher in their classroom at lunch. And I would have these like conversations with people that were just phenomenal and amazing. And I would leave them all jazzed and pumped, and all these new ideas were coming in. And I realized that it doesn't really happen in the day-to-day of teaching, because we're too busy spending an unhealthy amount of time around teenagers or preteens or children, and all going a little mad inside. But I was having all this great, and I was like, these need to be recorded. These need to be out there. And I'm generally obsessed with podcasts. I listen to about 9 hours a week of podcasts. It's a problem. Almost all of them are on education. It's real bad. I might just have an addiction problem now that I'm thinking about it. But anyways,
podcast. We're not judging here. This is a safe zone, Brad. You feel free to
fourth cup, third cup of coffee. I just do everything in moderation. But yeah, so I decided I wanted to record them, and so then it was about, I don't know, it was probably another 6 months of sort of concept building in my head. I knew I wanted a conversation show, like just relaxed and informal and laid back. I love the feel of this. It's the same kind of feel. It's just two people chatting, checking in, seeing what's going on, and so that's really what I wanted. But I knew it needed something. Like it needed a thing to just sort of make it flow, to sort of give it some semblance of the same similarity episode to episode. So I started to develop this model where I would ask the same questions of all my guests over time. And it really came down to developing the right questions. I like the number 3. So that was always going to be my idea, is 3 questions. And it came down to what those 3 questions were. And so each of them kind of have an origin, which is kind of cool. So, my first question I always ask all my guests is, what is the biggest problem facing education today?
I love that question. And I love how different the answers are episode to episode, depending on the lens that the educator is looking through. I mean, you say that you ask the same questions, but the conversations are so vastly different episode to episode.
Yeah, and thank you. That's what I go for. That's what I hope. Although when I created that question, I didn't actually think that I'd be 124 episodes in and still have only heard 2 or 3 people give the same answer, which is scary.
Oh, yeah, that is weird. Can you believe that? It's like, wow.
So, but that one really started because somebody asked me one time. They were like, and it was a parking lot conversation. I distinctly remember it, with my first guest on the podcast ever, Jay Svetko, and we're just having a parking lot conversation at school, and he said, I threw away. I was like, well, we all know education is broken, right? Like I just kind of threw that out there in the course of the conversation, and he just stopped and he goes, yeah, but what exactly is broken? And I was like, huh? He was like, no, people say that, but what do they mean? What is broken? What is the thing that is broken? And so from that was kind of where that question came from, is we don't really point to the one thing very often.
I'm going to interrupt you really quick. I want to get into kind of some maybe of your favorite answers you've heard. I do want to know though, can we pose this question to our listeners right now? I mean, we have the comments rolling. We have a ton of people that are still saying good morning. They're interacting with each other. They're commenting about all the swag they have and how much they love podcasts, and maybe have some addictions like you have, which we're going to get deeper into. But can we pose the question to our family here and they can respond in the comments?
I see some love for English teachers. Shout out. I love me some English teachers. I actually passed the 612 English certification exam yesterday.
Woo! That's a big accomplishment. Cheers to you.
I was I was certified 5th through 9 in our state of Florida until yesterday. Well, I got the unofficial pass. I have to pass the essay portion, which, I'm not that concerned about, but yeah. Oh, and Mike's here. What's going on, Mike?
Yeah. We have awesome guests with us. We have Kristen here, Mike, Tammy, Rochelle, it's fabulous. So will you put on your best podcasting voice and pose our question to our group, and maybe they'll jump in here as they continue to congratulate all the wonderful things you're doing too. Also, Kristen did want to know the name of the podcast one more time so they can all go.
I'll include that in my, we'll go into podcast voice. Hello and welcome to this episode of the Planning Period Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Brad Schruffler. So it's the Planning Period Podcast. And my first question for all my guests is, what is the biggest problem facing education today?
All right. So as you're listening to, I want you to comment in here. what you think the biggest problem is. Have you had some answers that, what'd you say?
I was answering Mike. I'm bad about watching chat. Like that's like I'm just
it's a good distraction. I know it's hard to read and be in a conversation, and we're just going to get distracted the whole time. So when you pose this question, you said you haven't heard a lot of repeats. Is that still the case? Even, I mean, you said 120 episodes in.
Yeah, it is. I've kind of been able to categorize the answers into a handful of big ideas. Okay. But so like one of them is testing, right? Standardized testing. And you can expand that a little bit bigger and grab everything with sort of accountability measures.
Okay.
So just general accountability measures have a lot. There's a lot about sort of social issue. So if you link about like social stigma of teachers, social stigma of education in general, social beliefs about things, the lack of social emotional learning, and if you just sort of big category, come at that a bunch of different ways. And the one that I have kind of been forced to, people trying to nail me down on my own question, and I almost never answer it. And in fact, it was like episode 100. I had my dad come on the show. My dad's a former educator. He retired about 3 years ago, as he was an elementary school principal for his last 6 or 7 years. And I had him come on episode 100 and take over the mic because he listens to every episode. And so he interviewed me for the last 100th episode. And he finally nailed me down on an answer. And I ultimately said, and this is the other big one, is the legislative issues. So I think if you look at education, the bosses, if we look at Department of Education at either the state, even local in a lot of cases, but local, state, federal level, the people that are running education, 99% of them have never been educators. And I always equate it to saying, like, they say, oh, well, I was in school, so I know how to be. And I'm like, that's like saying that you're a mechanic because you drive a car. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I think that's where I would be.
I really love in the comments, people are commenting with a lot of different answers to answer the question that you posed to them. If you are listening right now and you have shared your answer, I want you to screenshot and share this out to your favorite social media platform, whether this be Twitter or Instagram or anything in between, and see if your network can also be responding to this question. Because what I'm loving is that while it seems like there's a lot of comments like, oh, everything, I think you're really encouraging your podcast guests and people in here to be specific. Can you really nail down what the concern is? And I still stick to my answer that I gave in the podcast. I think that our answer to this question has such a big variety. I think that you're correct that there's a lot of different categories of this, but I really think it's those comfortable with complacency. I think if we were more eager to grow and more hungry to solve these problems, we wouldn't have them. I don't know. It's interesting listening to everyone's answer for this.
It is. Mike Washburn's in the chat. I saw him. He was a former guest on the show, and he said trust. And totally, I can see that again. Kind of goes back to those social stigma issues. There's a lot of talk. I see the 19th century, model being used in the 21st century. That's definitely a thing. I actually ended up giving a Ignite talk at ISTE a couple years ago, specifically about the 100-something answers I have gotten to this question. And that was really what it came. And that was what my Ignite talk was basically about, was just how I've asked this question now of people all over the world. And the other thing that happens is almost never does anybody just have an answer ready. Because you've never been asked that question, right? Which is kind of scary. Like, shouldn't we be asking everybody? Like, shouldn't we all be asking that question all the time, right? Like,
I love it. And I think that it really allows educators to try and get to the root of the problem. We have that conversation sometimes. They have to ask why 5 times to really truly get to why someone's upset or why there's a problem or whatever, to really truly get to the root of the problem. And so this is another example of something that if we could try and get to the root of the problem, could we actually enact change if we came together and all worked? So I love it. So what's your second question that you ask? I mean, you talk about what's the problem with education. It's a very heavy topic. I'm sure it creates a lot of discussion. I've heard really great things in each podcast that your guests are able to share. How do you shift that?
So that question, this one is the only one that doesn't have much of an origin story, but it's because of the way I wanted the show to feel. And so the second question for all my guests is, what is something you're doing that you wish all educators would do? And it's a fun question because it kind of, the goal I had with it was to be, what is the biggest problem with education? And then kind of, how do we fix it without asking that directly, right? Because most cases, when you say this is the biggest problem in education, what you're doing that you wish everyone would do tends to address that problem, even if it's in a roundabout kind of way.
Sure, absolutely. Have you had a variety of answers for that as well? Or do you find that there's categories for the answers of that too?
That one's all over the place, and it's cool because it also, and it wasn't intended to do this, but it works out well. But it's also the way for a lot of my guests to sort of bring in the specific thing they're passionate about. I get a lot of guests that are, maybe publishing a book soon, or they're, they have their own shows or podcasts or their own little niche in the social media education Twitter space or whatever. And so that second question really gives them a chance to say, like, well, I'm publishing a book on STEM and STEM in the classroom, and that's what I wish everyone would do, or whatever that may be, which is nice because it, like you said, I like the show to be informal and more conversational, but I also want people to be able to talk about their passions. It's about that person. It's not about me. It's about, which is why I feel like I'm talking a ton right now, but it's about that person.
Right now, we're like flipping the mic on you. You're the one actually sharing right now.
Yeah, I don't talk much on my own show. It's nice. It also means I don't have to prepare, which is right up my alley.
We didn't prepare for this. We're just winging it right now. We're pros.
It's perfect. You would never know. You would think we scripted it.
Yes, it's all scripted. We're actually reading from a teleprompter in front of us, getting this all taken care of. It's awesome. Very professional over here, of course.
Yeah, so I like it.
Go ahead.
No, you're up. Go.
We have a lot of people kind of sharing and not only responding to your first question, but now they're starting to share on the second. I really enjoy that you're allowing people to not only share in some of the challenges of education, but also some of the celebrations, because if they're able to highlight something that they're currently doing that they wish everybody did, that could add a lot of food for thought for educators that are listening. I see that you're laughing. Did you see a comment so far that's making you laugh?
Yeah, I love watching. I love having a live chat. That's the one thing I wish I had on my podcast, because I love getting interactions and talking back and forth. And Mike Washburn, LOL, Brad is a professional. That is something that if you listen to my show, I point out on the regular how not professional I am and how I'm just making stuff up as I go along. One of the running jokes I have on my show is I will have a moment, like if you've podcasted or you've done interviews or anything, you don't want it to sound like you're just directly asking questions of people in order, which is kind of tough to do when you ask the same 3 questions of everybody. But so I will have moments where I manage to segue into one of my next questions, and then I immediately point out the smooth segue I just made, which completely undoes it. So
completely. That's hysterical. I do want to give a special shout out before we kind of get into those questions that you continue to ask, maybe addressing the one that we were just discussing. If you are listening to our recording right now, whether it be, after the fact on YouTube or as a bonus episode of Teach Better Talk podcast, remember the only place you can actually participate live, be a part of this live chat, we can be laughing at your comments, highlighting all your answers, is in our private group right now. So if you head to teachbettergroup.com or just go to Facebook and search Teach Better Team, join our private group, over 4,000 educators all coming together, a variety of grade levels and roles in education. We're kind of like K-12, K through college. It seems, every educator has their own fit in this group, but we'd love to have you not only sharing in these daily drop-ins, but participating so you can transition from a consumer to truly a participant in this bigger conversation. And this is also a great space to throw out questions for yourself that you're looking for Brad and I to discuss. I will give a warning to Mike. He, I'm sure, will throw out an absurd question, but everybody else, feel free to throw something out, and Brad and I will do our best to try and be problem solvers with you, alongside you, as you try and navigate education, especially during this very strange time. I do want to know, we've talked about 2 questions you share. I'd love to get to the third, because that one kind of stumped me a little bit when I was on your podcast personally. But when you're doing all of this, has your role in education, whether it be in your coaching role or just with the podcast, changed since COVID-19 has kind of come to the forefront of the conversation, or has things kind of stayed the same for you?
It's definitely changed. This is now my office all day, every day. And like we were talking about before we turned it on, like nights and I don't know, maybe that wasn't before we turned. I don't remember. Nights and days are the same thing. There's no end to work, right? Like it's hard, you know, because now teachers and students both are not on a scheduled time to work. At least in my district, we're not expecting sort of to follow the same schedules, and I think that's what most are doing. So, you know, I'm the answer guy. You know, I'm the guy that everybody has questions for. Like, I tried this and it didn't work, or this isn't loading, or I can't make this work. I can't, like, that's that part of my job is now kind of all of my job. And, you know, this is just me personally, and I don't know if other instructional coaches feel this way, but I always feel like if I don't answer their question when they ask it, even if it's at like 11 o'clock at night or whatever, then that's a whole group of kids that are not learning the way that they were intended to learn tomorrow. And so I have this like pressure to answer questions all the time. And so, you know, I actually every morning, and this is going to probably start becoming part of my daily routine because I enjoy this chat. This is fun. So now I got to get up an extra hour early every morning because now my routine is to watch Mike Washburn and Steve Isaacs on Twitch at 9 o'clock every morning while I answer emails because they live stream on Twitch every morning. And so I watch them and chat with them. And then now so then I kind of answer emails, and then I start building resources. I'm making YouTube videos like crazy for people in my district. I'm answering questions. I love coding. It's something I'm really passionate about and enjoy. And I love a good spreadsheet. I could talk about Google Sheets for hours. I love a good spreadsheet. And so I have been building a lot of tools for whole schools in our district because, you know, it's now all of a sudden we're online. And one of the big questions that kept coming up is, how do we do attendance? How do we do attendance? What is attendance? What is attendance? And for me personally, the answer is easy. It doesn't matter. But apparently you can't say that, like you're not allowed to do that. So, you know, I built a Google Sheet with a little bit of script coding that does attendance based on Canvas access, because that's our learning management system. So it does like a couple of VLOOKUPs. It takes our schedule list and then VLOOKs with this, you know, the list, this report I can pull from Canvas of who hasn't logged in, and then shoots off individual emails to every teacher so that they can input the attendance for the week. And so, you know, little things like that are saving time and trying to reduce the workload on students and teachers and administrators, you know, and just that's a lot of what my job is creating things and sharing them out.
Well, and I love that you're trying to find easier ways to do things. I need a you version in my life to help me figure out how to be as efficient and effective as possible through all these. So I'm confident that your teachers are extremely appreciative of the work you're doing. I do want to laugh though, because a lot of people are kind of connecting with you specifically around this idea of kind of never being able to turn off the job. They feel like they're answering emails in the morning and in the evenings, and, you know, constantly on this trying to find the pressure of the balance. Are you trying to find the balance, or is it kind of like in the current environment, I don't know that I'm ever turning it off? Or do you actually take time where you're like, all right, from 6 to 8, I'm with the family, I'm relaxing, I'm, you know, kind of turning off the brain and disconnecting from work? Because I think that, you know, everyone's kind of choosing a different path road for this.
Yeah. If anybody out there has a way to turn off the brain, I would love to know it. Feel free to share. Please drop it in the chat, because that would help me a lot. So no, I don't have a way to do that for sure. I will say I've been a little better now, at least in the last few weeks, of trying to disconnect over the weekend. That has kind of been, you know, at night I will still check my phone and I'm still a slave to messages, but I've been trying to, at least on the weekends, kind of take a step back and you know, I will maybe see, because my email's on my phone, so I will maybe look at it and I'll be like, I could answer that right now. And I kind of have this rule roughly where if I can't answer it in about a minute, then I'm going to leave it until Monday. So that's, it's not a formal rule, but it's working pretty well so far.
I like that strategy. I mean, then you're like previewing the email, seeing how immediate it is, because it might drastically impact a student's learning, or maybe it's just something that you can address later. And I like the idea of taking off the weekends. You know, I keep a very busy schedule typically. I mean, I'm in the classroom full time. I'm also with the team, and my days are kind of filled with students and my evenings are filled with teachers. And we're kind of joking with the team right now. We're really trying to encourage all the members of the Teach Better team, including those in our family that are live with us now, and just say, really take a weekend. It's okay to take a weekend. I'm like trying to set a schedule that I'm taking off Saturday mornings, like really, not doing anything anything related to work on Saturday mornings. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. I like Mike's point too about blocking time in your calendar. And as I think Mike, you have the same problem I do. I have a scheduling calendar that anyone can sign up for because of the podcast. So I send that out to guests. And sometimes, if you've been a podcaster, sometimes you'll send out a link to somebody and say, hey, I'd love to have you as a guest. And they maybe don't check it for 3 weeks or a month. And so I'll think, oh, next week is pretty clear. And then somebody that I messaged a while ago just signs up for a time, which I love. It's great. I want them to do it. But then it's like, oh, darn. So I've had to get my wife, especially, in the habit of saying, hey, we have a game night with friends. Well, not recently, but in general, we have a game night with friends. And I'm like, oh, but you got to put it in the calendar or I might have a podcast interview. And so it's gotta be blocked. So yeah, I do try to do that. And that's another one of those things. So I have half-time custody of my son. And so I built a little script that automatically blocks out from about right around dinner time through to story time. It's dinner time to story time is automatically blocked out when I have him for a week. So every other week in my calendar, and I don't have to think about that. And yeah, somebody asked about if it's Calendly. Yeah, I use Calendly personally. That's what I use.
Yeah, I love Calendly. It's the only way that I'm able to book appointments with people, because otherwise you have to go back and forth and try and find a time that works. And especially, I'm sure you do this all the time, but with time zones, oh my gosh, it kills me. I'm like, I can't keep everything straight. And the problem is sometimes you're emailing with 2 or 3 people that want to get a meeting with you, or for your instance, want to record a podcast, and you're trying to save time that may not be booked, but it might be booked. And Calendly takes care of all of that. So it's a great tool. There's others out there. If you're a teacher trying to book times with students, there's kind of other tools I might recommend. But if you're trying to do anything where scheduling a meeting or podcast is perfect, we are actually block out Monday nights are holistically Teach Better Talk podcast recording evenings. So we have a little bit of a different system than you do, I know. But
so that's why you don't have anything available till late July.
I know, because we only record podcasts on Monday nights, and we do 4 at most 4 a night on a Monday night. So we try and open things up. But you're right. If you try and get on the Teach Better Talk podcast, we're booked a little bit out, which is not a bad problem to have.
No, not at all. Yeah. And I will say, it is, to me, it's a lot about finding the time to block it out. And then for me, it is as much as I can automate as possible. And that's why, I do want to drop in. I love coding. That's something I'm excited about. And that's why starting next week, I'm actually doing a 1 hour a week live show talking about coding and education that is going to be part of the Inside Participate Twitch channel. So twitch.tv/Inside Participate. Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. It's called Unscripted. Unscript, because it's script. So the idea is it's kind of project based. And so I will be working on a coding project, describing it as I go, but also having a guest in most of the time just to chat, talk about what I'm working on. And, I'm pretty excited about it. I'm actually really excited about it. I love to code, and I think it's a cool way to teach coding to other teachers and to students and to other people, just to talk about what code can do. So we're going to start with Google Apps Script and work in that for a while, which is a tremendously powerful tool that it lets you so all those Google add-ons you use, right? All of those Google add-ons that you check out, they are all done in Google Apps Script. And so it's really, really powerful and lets you do some awesome stuff. But it's just a simple little trick to be able to turn spreadsheets into emails, automatically. You click a button and it just emails everyone on a spreadsheet. It's super easy, barely an inconvenience. And I think people should use it. So that's what we're doing.
I am already seeing in the comments there are people very, very excited for this. They love the topic. I think the topic's fabulous. Can you give us a little more information about where we can go to find it? And then also, you said 1 o'clock. What time zone is that?
Oh, yeah, I guess that would help. 1 o'clock Eastern time is where it's going to be. Tuesdays at 1 o'clock Eastern. Our first episode is going to be on May 12th, I think it is. Is that the date? Yeah, that sounds right. Next Tuesday, whatever that is. Yeah, May 12th. And I'll have Mike Washburn as my first guest while we talk about some coding stuff. And it'll be on twitch.tv/Inside Participate. So that's their channel, which is really fun. If you haven't been checking that out with Mike doing a bunch of stuff there, they're adding more and more content to regular streams, and so it's really, really cool. Oh yeah, Mike dropped the link. And so it's really cool to just hang out. And so if you've never been on Twitch, it's great. It's like this, but all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great resource, and I love that you're using it. I know that Twitch does a lot of other fields as well, including gaming and everything else. This is a great use of it for education, that you can go and you can learn, and it's professional development on your own time. It's perfect.
Yeah. So I'm excited about it. And if you don't catch the live show, it'll be on YouTube and that kind of stuff too. But it's cool. So our first project actually is this idea that's been in my head for a long time, right? So everybody loves interactive notebooks. Not everybody, but I mean, a lot of people love interactive notebooks. And what I see a lot of people do is they use Google Slides to make interactive notebooks, because they set up the pages and like they do all these things, right? And so my idea is, one of the problems with doing that is you create it at the beginning of the year and then you share it out to the students. But then if you want to add pages, you have to sort of share the slide to all the kids, and then they have to copy it and paste it into their interactive notebook of their copy version and all this other stuff. It's a mess, right? So my plan is to create an app that will automatically push out the new pages to every kid's interactive notebook Google slide deck. So you'll just be able to push new slides to everyone. So yeah, I see a couple questions about what is Twitch.
Yeah, you want to go deeper into that?
So Twitch is originally started as a live streaming video game service. That's really what it was intended for, and it has just sort of become one of the most stable and reliable live stream channel systems out there. And so what it ultimately is you're watching people live. You know, it's like Facebook Live all the time. And so a lot of it is geared towards gamers and video games, but more and more people are going on to do little talk shows or talk about professional development or whatever. So, I mean, that's really what it is it's a live streaming system, but it's a lot of fun. There is, tons and tons of cool content out there, and lots of people making stuff. And so it's cool, but it's ultimately live streaming just like this. You have, a chat and you can kind of interact with that and watch that stuff. So.
And if you've never used Twitch and you're a part of our video right now, or watching this afterwards on YouTube or as a bonus episode of Teach Better Talk podcast, this could be your perfect introduction to going and seeing if it's something that you can be a part of more consistently. I mean, you're hosting a show that's extremely relevant to all educators. Just download the app, go on the website, and get involved. It's a good opportunity.
Tim said that me and Jake Miller would get along. That's very true. We do get along. We've hung out in person, and he's been on my show already. We had to prevent ourselves from doing a lengthy description of Google Sheets in that episode, because he said he could talk about Google Sheets for hours, and I was like, yes, I could too. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Well, Jake Miller did join our Teach Better conference that we had back in November. And I'm hoping he chooses to come and join us again at the Teach Better Conference 2020 this year, October 2nd and 3rd. I know that you said you're busy, but we need you to figure out a way to get to the Teach Better Conference 2020. We continue to release kind of like our featured lineup, the initial people that we know are going to be there as proposals are open through the month. And we want to make sure that there's a lot of amazing voices there that are able to share their stories. So I'm just saying, nudge, nudge, Teach Better Conference. We want to see you there, Brad. I think you're a great fit. Jake Miller should come too.
I just actually yesterday or the day before, I got my code for Podcasters Row, because I applied just thinking like, okay, maybe I could make this work. So we'll see.
Yes.
I'll have to see if I can pull it off.
You'd be great for Podcasters Row. I love it. And Jake Miller, that's what he was a part of last year. We had a lot of awesome podcasts that were able to come be featured, and hopefully many, many more this year as we continue to amplify how many amazing educational podcasts are out there. So we went over your podcast a little bit. We talked about question 1 and question 2. You said you had 3. So do you want to throw out our third question that you continue to share out? Hopefully in the comments, people can kind of share their stories. This is a very special one, I know, to many people. We've already been live for 40 minutes. I think that with how active this amazing group has been, they deserve to know that third question.
Yeah, we can't. I mean, I kind of love the idea of leaving them hanging. You'll have to check out the podcast to hear out question number 3. But no, let's ask it, because I don't do that. So question number 3 is, who is the greatest teacher you've ever had? So when I look at my show, the idea is, right, like it's kind of this inverted pyramid. Like you start with this really big concept. I'm going to line up with my camera better. There we go. These are the things I have to practice before my live show next week. You got a really big idea, right? You start with the big stuff, which is what is the biggest problem? And then you bring it down a little more personal. It's like, what are you doing that's addressing that problem, or what are you doing personally? And then you narrow it down all the way to the bottom, which is just the most personal, I think, is who is the greatest teacher for you? And that one came from a good friend of mine, Kristen Iannuzzi, and she was speaking once, and she said in her story that, the reason she became a teacher is because when you ask anybody who's the greatest teacher they've ever had, or who is their favorite teacher ever, they'll tell you a story. Right? Nobody just goes, like, nobody has ever said just, Mr. Boyd. Like, you have to tell why, right? Like, the story has to come next. It's why is that person here? So it's always going to be a story. And so I think that ending there is always fun. Like it's just a nice way to like round third and come on home, which we use a little baseball analogy there. It's a lot of fun. So I like that question. It's who is the greatest teacher you've ever had?
So in the comments here, I want you to post, maybe we could do like the name of the teacher, give them a special shout out. And also if you can say why in like one sentence, I think that would be really, really tricky. But because our comments are going to fill up, try and give that one line of like, what did they really do that made them your favorite educator? And then it would be wonderful, again, if you're watching this live, or if you're even listening to this afterwards on Teach Better Talk podcast or on our YouTube channel where you can see the live stream, screenshot it and share this out. I would love to see, especially during Teacher Appreciation Week, let's give a shout out to the amazing educators that we've had in our life and we'll continue to have wonderful celebrations for as we continue to be our best educators that we're trying to be as well. So I love this question. It stumped me completely because, for a lot of different reasons, but I did challenge you when I was on your podcast to share your favorite, and you had an answer. I know you've shared it a few times in a few different episodes of teachers that have impacted you. And, I'm pretty sure if I'm correct, you've shared two because they impacted you in completely different ways. Is that true?
Yeah, I have two. So one of them is, her name was Miss Forsyth when I knew her. She's now Miss Barnes. But she was my biology teacher in 10th grade. And then I took AP biology my senior year just because I wanted to be in her class again. And so her was just this, amazingly high expectations, right? Like just tremendously high expectations. But also you never doubted for a second that she cared. You never doubted for a second that she loved her students, and her expectations were realistic for each student. Like it wasn't that I can't say in retrospect if the grading was different or whatever else, but it was clear that she had different expectations depending on who it was. Like those expectations were tailored for what she knew I could do. And I will never forget that I disappointed her and I only got a 4 on the AP bio exam, and she was very annoyed. She was like, Brad, if you had put any more effort into this, you would have gotten the 5. I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. I really felt bad about it.
Man.
But then the other one is Mr. Boyd, my 12th grade English teacher, also AP Lit and Comp English teacher. And totally the opposite. If you walked in his classroom right now under any current model of observation and accountability, he would be terrible. Like he would be needs improvement developing. He'd be awful. Like it'd be terrible. And yet he sat at the front of the room. He wore a tweed jacket like 90% of the time, which is great. And he would just talk. And I don't know that we ever really talked about books. I'm sure we did. I'm sure we talked about literature, but he would just come in sometimes and like there'd be papers on the desk for something to read, and we'd read a little short story or something. And then he'd go, all right, let's talk about it. And then he would just sit there and then he would talk. And it was, and in my school, there was like a group of us that had a lot of classes together by our senior year, but also had a lot by our junior year. So it was like a group, it was a massive school, 2,000, 3,000 students in the high school, but we had this little almost cohort that was in a lot of classes together. And so we all knew each other and were goofing off well. And then he would just challenge us. And it became this game of like, we would try to change the subject to something that we knew more about than he did. And in the entire year we had him, we never found anything. Like, it didn't matter what we talked about. Somehow he always knew more than we did. And not about literature. We would talk about nice watches and like precious gems. And he just had this vast depth of knowledge about everything. And you would have sworn, like, from the outside that he didn't care about any of his kids, because he just sat there and was sarcastic and talked at you and like would kind of go back and forth with kids, but it didn't look like he cared. But in the class, I always knew that he cared somehow. Like, there was something about it that clicked with me. So kind of that sarcasm and this overall depth of just knowledge so combined with Miss Forsyth's like loving, caring aesthetic is kind of what I try to do, which are two contradictory styles. So, you know,
trying to find the balance. I mean, a lot of the comments here are first grade teachers, chemistry teachers, English teachers, you know, really talking about relationships needing to be at the forefront and, you know, how they made you feel. We have shop teachers, English teachers being highlighted, teachers that are retired, teachers that are currently still in the classroom, talking about empathy and, you know, making learning fun. I love that this continues to be an opportunity for people to share their own stories of how a teacher has positively impacted them, because the majority of our listeners right now are educators. And I you know, it's interesting to think about going into a field that you're passionate about. A lot of people's stories is sparked from either having wonderful teachers that they connected with, that they wanted to have that same impact, or some of them was a teacher maybe they didn't connect with. And so they wanted to kind of create that environment that they feel like they didn't have. And I'm sure you see that in a lot of your answers from your podcast guests that get to highlight and give a shout out to educators that have impacted their life.
Yeah, this one, I love this question. Like, it's so much fun. It makes me feel warm and cuddly inside. And it's, you know, getting to hear someone's story, right? Like, that's what I love most in life, is just hearing other people's stories. And that was why I became an English teacher, is because I love stories, and storytelling is kind of just central to who I am. And so this one really lets people tell their story. But what's interesting, and I found over 126 episodes of my show or whatever, is that there tends, in most people's episodes, in most people's discussions, there tends to be this vein that just kind of runs subtly through all three answers, right? So like, it's not direct, it's not right in your face, but it tends to be this vein. They're typically the answer to who is their greatest teacher and what makes that person their greatest teacher. Like, if every teacher did it and it flowed backwards, we'd be fixing the other thing. And so it's really cool that like it's meant as this like top-down model of like how we do things, but if you take it backwards, it really shows sort of a good picture of who a person is as a guest. You know, when they come in, it gives a good picture of them and who they are as an educator, and it's really been this awesome way to like connect with people and build relationships across the internet. And especially now, that's been really nice. And I've heard from a lot of my listeners that that's the way they feel. It's like you feel like you really get to know someone in a way that, you know, a lot of education podcasts focus on pedagogy. My show does not do that. Like, it might be some in there, and you might get some knowledge out of it. But to call my show professional development would be a stretch. I mean, I feel like that would be a stretch, you know. And I'm okay with that. We have plenty of great shows out there for professional development. I'm totally fine with my show being about people and hearing about people.
I love it. Well, as you are continuously commenting and hopefully connecting with Brad after this daily drop-in, you know, this really is an opportunity not only to kind of think about these three questions yourself and really dive into the impact you want to have as an educator. But I have to say again, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, and we always appreciate teachers, but this is actually a time that people are heavily talking about it, I know. So if you are taking the time to highlight the amazing educator in your life that impacted you, don't just have it stop here, although giving them a shout out here is wonderful, but send them an email, do something that really shares with them a little more specifically, a little more personally, the impact that they had, because we talk a lot about how teachers don't always get to see the fruit of their labor. And if you took an extra 2 minutes today, 3 minutes today, 5 minutes today, to reach out to the educator that you feel like really impacted you and made you the person that you are today, or why you entered into this field. You know, it's a few minutes to make somebody else's day a little bit brighter, and we'd love to have you do that. You know, Brad, before we end today, since we've been live for about 50 minutes so far for this daily drop-in,
Crazy.
I know, it goes so fast, right? You shared a ton, not only about your expertise in education, but a lot of great resources and opportunities for people to stay connected. Would you give us some specifics if they want to stay connected to you, they want to keep learning from you, and they're going to go subscribe, rate, and review the podcast? How can they stay connected?
So I'm Brad Shreffler everywhere. So at Brad Shreffler on Twitter, it's SHRE. There's no C. Everyone wants to put a C in there. SHREFFLER. Brad Shreffler is, and then BradShreffler.com. I'm at Brad Shreffler on Instagram, although I never use it. I'm now at Brad Shreffler on TikTok. I'm not good at it, but I'm trying. My most recent guest pushed me to really dive in and create some stuff there. Although I am pretty proud of my teacher appreciation video I did, because Tuesday this week, our leadership team at our school, including me, drove all over the Central Florida area to deliver gifts to all of our teachers. We think we did about 1,000 miles of driving altogether. So, but that was super fun. So I made a little video as I was going. So I was pretty proud of my TikTok that day. But otherwise, at Brad Shreffler in all the places. Oh, and Brad Shreffler on YouTube. That was the other one.
Yeah, and I hope you continue to be an active part of our family here, because I know the Teach Better family really loves the work that you're doing. We always support the work that you're doing. We want to continue to do that and have you stay connected here to, the educators that are tuning into our daily drop-ins that we're doing every single morning. You've been an amazing guest, and a lot of great questions that we can think through and resources shared. So we just appreciate you taking the time. I know that you have a very busy morning and you gave us an hour of your time when you didn't need to. We really appreciate it.
Hey, no regrets. I'm glad I was here. Not even one letter. So nobody ever gets that joke. It was from a terrible movie, but it makes me laugh. It doesn't, it's so dumb, but it makes me laugh and I don't care.
Well, we appreciate all the things. So it's fine. You're allowed to have some entertainment this morning. Because, if I didn't provide you any laughs and giggles, you might as well provide them for yourself.
Oh, plenty, Ray. This is great. I love, we should just do this every day. And just that would be great. Hey, you do this every day. Isn't that convenient? That works out.
Yeah, do you just want to be a staple on the Daily Drop-In? Because I actually am not a part of the Daily Drop-In tomorrow. I know Becky and P. Sloan Joseph are coming together tomorrow, but I'm sure they'd welcome you as their third wheel. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm glad. I always like being a third wheel. That's actually, I aspire to that in most of my life. Makes my wife uncomfortable, though. Go figure. I don't know.
I love it. It's great. Well, Brad, thank you again for joining us. We are going to say goodbye to our amazing network here, but do not forget we are doing our daily drop-in every single morning, Monday through Friday, and we are truly just trying to be here to not only help you kick off your morning with the right energy for the day, but also be here as brainstorming partners as you continue to serve your students to the best way possible and hopefully give you some resources and food for thought to make your day a little bit brighter. So thank you again, Brad. Really appreciate you. And for everybody else, we will see you tomorrow.